Rightio. Well, thanks for joining us, mate. It's been a bit of a tough start to the year with a few bad luck at some races you could put it down to, but it seems like the last few months has turned the corner and you've been finding good form with the podium just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's funny. You judge very quickly because of the few performances you get to line up at. I'm really happy how I'm going at the moment. I feel from out of Busselton at the end of last year, like I had a bit of the health concerns from my foot sort of resurfaced in September. And then Busselton was frustrating because I really had to turn things around to be in the shape I was. And then it just didn't really go for me when I got on the bike. And then over the years, I took some time away from it. You're still moving, but time away. And then I just had a really good January, February, March. I went to Geelong. Had some mechanical issues, not stuff I widely want to talk about, but it forced me to go and have a look at a few things. Like, yes, I changed bike brands, but it was more to do with the way things were moving that was causing some resistance. And I was able to address that with some good help at home. And then I went to South Africa and I've been really healthy since last September and then just picked up a throat infection. I got there and you have hope, right? It's a fair trip to South Africa and having two little ones now, you're still putting it all on the line. I'd been there 5 days and then the race was in 2 days' time and I wasn't sleeping. I was coughing all night and I almost shifted to come home. In hindsight, would I? Probably not still. I just thought I'll have a go because sometimes when you're unwell, things go your way, but my throat just sort of got to the point on the bike where it had swollen over so much and I just had to get back to T2 and then try and get some treatment or some medication to ease all that. But, I was fortunate to come home and Busselton 100 was 2 weekends later. So I could carry on some good momentum and it just, I guess, set me on a better path to Cairns this year. I wasn't able to be there last year. I was injured. I'm really excited to be going back. I feel in really good condition, in a good place, despite really the last 2 years. The only Ironman that I've finished, I walked in the last 2 years in December. So my form doesn't seem great on paper, but I know how things are moving. And when you've done something long enough, you have a lot of reference points, especially on home roads and home locations. So yeah, still 4 weeks to go and I'll head over in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, there's nothing better than training at home and it is a brutal sport when we are on that fine line and with travelling and things like that. So to have a good stint at home and to have that race the other week and then obviously, the lead into Cairns and we're at the business end of Cairns now into the build and how do you feel you're absorbing the work? Obviously, it's at that point of time where you're right on the borderline and you feel like you're really absorbing the work you're putting in.
Yeah, I guess 2 years ago, having, a career highlight for me, I had a blueprint from a program point of view because I only had 14 weeks to prepare then because I'd had the bone infection I'd come back from. So it's funny, I feel like I'm coaching myself because I hadn't really looked back at that program. And so the discussion with my coach, Chris, was let's just take that from about 8 weeks out it was. And, so I've been in that mix for a while now. And yeah, I've got some reference points there and it's interesting looking at it. I know I've done some crazy stuff over time from a training point of view, but yeah, there's some bike work that I was looking at the sessions before I'm rolling out and I'm like, geez, I had to look back to see, did I actually do this, like this day, like in terms of the stress score and stuff. And anyway, yeah, I feel quite good. I don't really remember how, I wasn't leaving notes then. I was just happy to be moving again. So I think I was enjoying it then. I guess that's the basis of it. When you've done something for a while, I still really enjoy it and love it. So I feel like I'm absorbing it. I'm sleeping well. Yeah, it's all about getting to the line healthy, as everybody knows. So I'll keep a focus there and, going across early. Tom, our oldest, is at kindy now. So that adds to the flavour of potentials. I'm just over in Cairns for a few weeks to not be on my own, but and get away from them. But, just avoid what I can.
Yeah, nice. And you mentioned that you're using the same sort of blueprint. We obviously all know how dangerous that was last time and how good you went. And has your race strategy changed based on the training and how it's gone in this block, or is it very similar?
Last time, I didn't even look at a list until we went to the briefing, mainly because I was just really happy to be in Cairns 2 years ago. There was no discussion. I had come out of Busselton in the December prior and went what was the Aussie record then, which has well been eclipsed now, but 7:40 at home. And then in sort of that 6 month period, because I hadn't raced with what was going on, I kind of went missing in action. But I still knew what I needed to do. And if anything, the preparations then held me at a level where I was never teetering with just overreaching. And everyone's subject to it. Whatever level you're at, you love to sort of see, and feel when you're feeling a session coming to you, yeah, I'll just push 10 watts more or 20 watts more, or I'll run 5 or 10 seconds quicker. I just didn't do any of that. So I guess tactically then it was very much like I was racing age group again. Let's get through this and tick one discipline off at a time. And this year, it's not a championship race. It's not Pro Series. It's still special for me. I think this is my 10th trip to Cairns. And just another opportunity. So Australia's got a lot of good talent and the Kiwis as well. So it might not attract as many internationals, but when everyone's fronting up to an Ironman, if you haven't done the work, you do get found out pretty quickly. They're so unforgiving. I haven't enjoyed walking through them in the past. So yeah, tactically, you expect if I'm riding well, I'm going to just continue on and ride through, and I'll just carry that tactic. I don't enjoy riding with people, mate. So yeah, if I can set that tone early, and again, 2 years ago, swimming was a big focus. I'm really happy how I'm feeling in the water. It hasn't always corresponded in a race, but yeah, I'm really enjoying the training. It's a lovely time of year here in WA. We don't quite shift to rain till probably about Cairns time. So it's just some really nice days too to pull some big hours.
And it's, it works on that whole feeling of, if you're in a good place mentally and just enjoying it, well, everything else comes along. You've been doing it for enough years now to know the right feeling. And I suppose it leads me into the next question a little bit, and how you sort of distinguish between normal fatigue and then the warning signs that you need to back off. You obviously mentioned your foot. All that is good now. Hasn't been flare-up since the previous one, and the body's feeling good.
Yeah, that got fully cleared in February. So I had a final scan, and what it shows when there's infection is edema on the bone, and it's all disappeared. So that was a massive relief. That's why I probably enjoyed things a bit more as well, because you still got the scar tissue in the area. So sometimes it gets sensitive, especially on long days in a bike shoe. Yeah, so that's behind me now, and that was a journey and an experience that went on for far too long. But, this is, I think, the 18th year, and you have a lot of different concerns and troubles with, I guess, your approach at times. But I've always been very favoured towards volume. So, when your body isn't quite there, I guess it can be a detriment too, right? So I'm forcing it. So I love the idea of a 40-hour week, but if your body and your mind aren't on the same page, you'll tend to force it. So I don't feel I'm in that place now. I feel very, sound across the board, and I don't take the opportunities for granted. I guess you do when you're a bit younger. I get a lot of people ask me now, like, how long left? And I love the question. It's quite motivating, because it's like, I still love it and I still enjoy it. And I've trained with plenty of good athletes over time, and when they're having fun, they're going fast. Not that I have a lot of training partners to have fun with, but I don't train with music. I just listen to whatever's going on in my head and whatever's going on around on the road. So I guess I still enjoy that solidarity of the sport and the demands of it as well. Sure, it's changing, but there's still a very much a baseline as to what's needed, and what's required from what you're trying to achieve.
And I guess with what you've been through, when you do come through this period and you are feeling good and you get the all clear on an injury like that, I suppose it just makes the highs even more high. We can take for granted sometimes a young, fit, healthy body. When you haven't got that, it's very hard to obviously keep motivated. But to be in a state where you are now and you're fit, healthy, and nothing holding you back like that is obviously just a bonus, especially leading into a big race that you've performed well at before. And yeah, it's exciting to see.
And haven't too,
Yeah,
it's also a race where I've suffered plenty of times as well. So.
Bit of redemption.
Yeah, I've had the best of both worlds, and it's like you definitely learn not to dwell on those. Even the highs, I guess. You always hear sports people say like, "Oh, make sure you enjoy the successes because they're not all the time," and that's very true. But I guess I enjoy getting out there most days and you don't know you're unhealthy until you are, right? You don't know. And when I say unhealthy, there might be an injury, there might be an infection, or whatever. You don't know you're in that state until you are very healthy. And you wake up in the morning and sure, your first few steps, you're holding to the wall to just get the blood flowing again. But, once you're actually walking and you get moving, and you give your body a chance, as soon as you don't have to force it and it feels like it's coming to you, it's a real luxury. There's no timeline on how long you can do something for. It's more so, you need to be open and I guess expose yourself to the evolving sport if you want to compete at that level. I definitely do and believe I can, but it's very easy when you've had no real highs over a 2-year period to look at yourself in a poor way. But as a lot of external belief disappears, I guess my self-belief hasn't shifted.
That's great. And the whole thing about enjoying the process, well, we wouldn't do this sport if you didn't enjoy the process, because that's probably 90% of the time. So I suppose with that, what's something that you've become less obsessed with as you've improved throughout your career?
Less obsessed with would be single sessions. I guess, the highlight of a key session doesn't impact my week. If you look at a week and there's one that stands out to you or someone's noted this is important, the result of it doesn't impact me, or I don't obsess over it like I once did. It's very much a wholesome look over a program over a period of time, and maintaining the consistency and literally putting on your shoes or diving in is far more valuable. And a lesson, something I've learned through good and bad times. I'll never dwell on when a session doesn't go well due to like, I don't know, something on the bike breaks and you got to come home and sort it out. I enjoy that thought of like finding a way to either get it done or just suffer through to a degree. Yeah, no, once upon a time, if you didn't hit some sort of interval, let's say you were doing 10 ones and you started to slow towards the end, it's the last thing you really think of when you're 35K into a marathon and you're moving pretty well. So I'm much better at moving on from those ugly sessions now, I guess.
Consistency is key, and obviously always shines through on race day.
Yep.
Without giving away your race tactic this year, is there a section of the course, so you know it very well, you already know could decide your race, looking at it from preparation going in?
Well, 2 years ago, it was on Rex's Lookout where Josh Yamberger attacked on the way back out. So I think we were about 100K in. When I say attacked, he just rode up the climb a lot harder, and there was a group of 6 of us, and I followed and no one else did. So when I say followed, it was, I was next in line type thing, and I was pretty keen to get on with it because your cadence is quite high and I was quite smooth. I wasn't really interested in waiting and didn't really want to have a running race with what I'd come back from. So I'm not saying I'm attacking in the same place, but Cairns, like anyone that's been there, has a very typical wind. Typically, you're riding home into a headwind if the winds are up. So even on that day, feeling good, I anticipated waiting until sort of towards that turning point, and then can really sort of, I guess it was very light wind that day, but you still have to work into it coming back, and you're also 120 plus K in. So tactically, a lot of moves, a lot of people, a lot of heroics early. We're seeing it more and more now for 2 hours, but I'll just absorb that a couple of hours, get riding well. And sure, you got to be dynamic in the sport because the ride is so long. The difference is you can tell people your tactics and they'll be like, oh, I'll be ready. But when you know what sort of output you can ride over a certain period of time, then most people just can't react. So, I've trained with a guy who every year has attacked the same time at the Nationals and got in the break early, and he seems to have done it for 15 years in a row. So, everyone's aware of that, and they were in Buninyong too. So it's you've got to go in with that belief, but be very adaptable to the dynamics on the bike. There won't be big bunches. The numbers won't be as we might have seen the last 2 years. So it could be very isolated, which that's what I'm preparing for. I love the idea of that solo TT.
And first year of the 20-meter draft rule up there as well, which could, especially with Rex in the middle there a few times, could play a part. So, yeah, that'd be interesting. What's something that you become extremely disciplined about that has nothing to do with your training over the past few months?
Sanitizing my son's hands after school. Yeah, it's he probably thinks it's overkill putting him in the shower when we're getting home at 3:30 from school, but it's all part of the process. Extremely disciplined with is bedtimes have got earlier, and not because of my age, just because I put him down at 7:30, 8 o'clock. So that's something I guess that's changed this year. Now that he's at school, I definitely go to bed a lot earlier. Yeah, I mean, I've always been disciplined. I guess that's why I've been in the sport so long. It's not something I've ever struggled with. I eat very similar. Everything from an outside is very consistent. I've been with my wife since I started triathlon, so she's kind of evolved and adapted to the same habits. And it's something I often talk about when I'm speaking to groups. I never feel like I make a sacrifice due to the enjoyment. I feel like when people have to talk about the sacrifices, they're doing something they perhaps don't want to do. It's probably just a personal point of view, and people could say to me like, oh, but you got to sacrifice this or that. And it's like, oh, if you're doing things well and you're enjoying it, it's not a sacrifice. And sure, we don't socialize very often, but we really don't whinge about that either. Now, more so because I'm not 21 and I'm late 30s, it's not forever. So I guess that side of the enjoyment and, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It's just part of the process resonates even more.
To be at that elite level, I think you've got to just have that ingrained, and you don't even think of it as a sacrifice to you. It's just something you do. So no.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This has been a really interesting one, just with a lot of podcasts and things recently, and just with a lot of the media hype. But what's your thoughts? What's power or technique and efficiency on the bike? What do you think's more important?
Power always wins, hey? When you see Ghana going, it's like, and even Remco, they're still putting out massive power. Cadence is a really big one for me. I feel like a majority of triathletes under rev. There's a real efficiency, and it needs to be developed and trained to ride at quite a high cadence. But you're very aerobic then. If I'm doing big weeks, I can afford to ride at a high cadence, and also that freedom you get through your back to then to not lock up to run well. Yeah, I'll always be a huge fan. I mean, it's nice when you're also, I guess, a bigger unit that you get to push more watts, right? It's like, it looks cooler on paper, but just from years of racing smaller guys and, in all sorts of shapes, it's like the power and the cadence definitely just seems to, we see all sorts of positions on the bike now. And none of them are perfect. They just need to be optimal for that person and comfortable for ours.
So true. You better get it right for yourself as opposed to trying to mimic someone else. Or
absolutely, yeah.
With your racing career and whatnot, do you think you've learned more from your best race or your hard races?
The best races are like a blur. That's why I'm so excited to go back to Cairns. I don't really even remember 2 years ago, whereas the year prior, I think I had COVID just leading in. They all seem like excuses, but they're longer days where you, I guess, spend more time in your own head and then you are disappointed with it. So it's often more motivating. I don't think any athlete in any sport would say they learnt the most from their successes. It's when you're not struggling, but you're being challenged. And that's what attracted me to the sport. It is a challenging sport on a good day. I always had that thought, if you were doing an 8-hour day and you sat in an office for 8 hours, stuff would still go wrong sitting in front of your computer. If you go out the door most days and you don't expect things to randomly happen, then you're kidding yourself. So I guess that's the challenge that I still enjoy, and that's what attracted me initially and still does now.
And then I suppose a good one, just a little bit off that, if someone sort of followed you for 24 hours right now, what would be the biggest surprise for them, you think?
How strong I am right now. I actually had a young guy come out this morning who I guess I'm going to work with him a little bit. He's trying to get a start at the Elite National Road Race in January, and he came out and he didn't last very long. He could have been some good feedback, but it's a real interesting question because people want to see the really big, cool numbers and stuff. But like tomorrow, I do 9 hours across 3 sessions. So it's like I cover a lot of Perth. I've seen a lot of, country Perth that are little just out of town that most people would never see. But none of it's, I guess, they would just see most of Perth. If that makes sense. Most of the townships, I don't think it's a shock. I mean, I don't really train with too many people. And it's not because people couldn't come. I just am very much a lone rider. And most people work during the day too, right? We got Nick over here who is doing great things in the sport at the moment, but he trains with his mates, and my mates are me right now. I've always found that funny. And for anyone that's come from a team sport, when you go to races or you see it in our sport, people train with their competitors. I've always found that strange. It's okay. I'm really good friends with Mike Phillips. We're probably quite similar in our approaches as well, but it was a very easy friendship. There was nothing forced there, and he lives in New Zealand, so I don't have to hang out with him all the time. They wouldn't see too much in the way of aggression when I'm training. I really do enjoy the training, and I'll move on from things pretty quickly because there's so much to get done. And then I'm home and it's still going, where I'm playing with monster trucks, and I just don't waste any time. That might annoy some people. Yeah.
It's hard to meet up with someone when you've got 9 hours of training, you got kids, you got family, so
and nor do your family. It's like they see you leave on the bike in the morning and you got to come home and not be hangry and not be fatigued because they might have had a hard day too. So it's like when I first started, I was living at home at mum and dad's, and I got 2 sisters, and the oldest of the 2 would always say to me if I was, a bit grumpy from coming in, like, oh, no one's making you do this. So it's like, and I still think about that. It's like, sometimes I'll just sit at a servo close to home and just like come back down and then roll home and you're back to normal, So just so you don't be reactive and irrational, you can respond instead of react.
It's such a good tip. And I think a lot of people who probably haven't got kids and wouldn't understand, but when you're doing 9-hour days and trying to fit everything in with life and all that kind of stuff, it makes it real and it makes the highs more enjoyable because obviously it's not a sacrifice. It's just, the commitment that you got to go through. So
absolutely.
I suppose it's a good lead in just for our last question here, but it's on a day like tomorrow, what's your go-to nutrition post-hard session or long day? What's a bit of a non-negotiable that you'll do?
I mean, this isn't so much stocked at aidsstation.com, but I'm a big chocolate milk fan. I always have been a big chocolate milk fan. So that's probably number one. Just due to the health side of things, I am quite big on the B's and C's. I guess I'm aware of when I'm putting them in because of the impact they can have on adaptions with training. But pill is something I've used for a long time, and I think the product's fantastic. And maybe it's kept me in it a bit longer with what I've been through, but I'm religious with that. and have been for probably the longest of any supplement in terms of like coming in. I'll always eat within that half an hour, but definitely the longer days, the chocolate milk. And I've probably favoured towards Coca-Cola a bit more as I've got older. I never really drank it for like 15 years, and I'd only drink it race day, but Cam Brown would be proud of me.
Chocolate milk and a Coke, I think.
Yeah.
It's
It's a bad mix, mate. It's a bad mix.
After 9 hours, though, it's like liquid gold, isn't it? We really appreciate you taking the time with us here today, and just to get to know you a bit more, and also to just to hear the story that you've been through and the journey that you've been on. And I'm sure there's a lot of people hoping that you go back to back, so to speak, up in Cairns, and we'll be looking forward to see an Aussie on home soil take the tape again. So we'll be up there watching, mate, and looking extremely forward to it.